Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic Podcast. This is your host, Ralph Burns. I'm the founder and CEO of Tier 11, alongside my amazing co-host,
Lauren E. Petrullo, the founder of Mongoose Media.
It never fails to get that smile. Every time I say amazing or unbelievable. Today is an amazing and an unbelievable show, by the way, because we've got an incredible guest. One that we've hinted at, I think, for, well, at least 2 months. Finally, we can get him, at least. This is a continuation of the show back on January 17th, episode 663. We'll leave links in the show notes, which was how to make your present better by making your future bigger. One of the big things and big takeaways of that, as well as multiple shows prior to that one, where we talk about outsourcing, we talk about hiring, we talk about how to scale your business, build your team to ultimately operate in the 20% that is your unique ability, and then figure out that 80% of the tasks that you're doing today, hire someone who's better than you at those other tasks to scale and grow the business. And this could also be very relevant to, let's say you're a marketing director, you're a VP of marketing of a marketing team. How are you going to scale and grow the business? Is it something that you're doing now that maybe you should be hiring another individual to do? Maybe it's headlines, maybe it's copy, maybe it's Google ads, maybe it's Facebook ads, maybe you should hire an agency. You know, hint, hint, to Tier 11. The point is all of this is related back to that episode 663. And then we did talk about this a little bit more just a few weeks back on our 4Cs episode. And that's the reason why we have today our HR guy. Although now he calls himself the VP of Employee Success. Just when I got used to calling him the VP of People and Culture, he now goes and changes his title. Today we actually have Josh Hill from Tier 11, all the way from Adelaide, Australia, by the way, on Perpetual Traffic. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ralph. Thanks, Lauren. It has been too long. I'm keen to start. And I do keep changing my title just to keep you on your toes, Ralph.
That's true. You're just going to be our HR guy. So, and of course, you pronounce HR in a very distinct way, which we're going to just make fun of you the entire show for. So
I'm used to it.
He's used to it.
Just keep it coming.
Anyway, Josh is just a little bit of bragging about Josh. First off, Josh, military background. He was a captain in the Australian military, had 150 plus soldiers under his command. And like one of the things that he actually did is we actually recruited him from the Australian military to be a media buyer at Tier 11, and then somehow persuaded him to leave the military and come here. I don't know how the hell that happened, but now he is our HR guy. So he's ascended through the ranks and has taken what was always a really good hiring process. And we've talked about our hiring process here quite a bit. Today, we're going to get into it a little bit deeper because it's easy to say, go hire somebody. It's easy to say, go find somebody. But how do you actually do it? That's the hard part. And so today, we're going to give you a framework that Josh has perfected through the years based on an original way in which we hired way back when, which was sort of an 8-step formula when we first started 11 as a virtual company. Now it's even better than it ever was. And now we're even recruiting in other countries. So there's a lot going on here. So hopefully you'll be able to have some takeaways from today's show as you continue to operate in your 20% and figure out the 80% that you don't want to be doing and get somebody else to do it, because there are people that are out there that want to do the stuff that you don't want to do. And that's how you scale. So anyway, Josh, maybe we could sort of take a step back here. We talked a little bit about the framework that we use, but we also discussed before we hit record one of the core elements before even the framework itself. So maybe we can talk about that. I know it's something that's near and dear to your heart, which is core values.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the tendency for a lot of companies, business owners, I mean, it doesn't really matter what size of a team you're operating on, but the tendency to jump straight to a result and hire, I mean, to resist that urge is difficult. Yeah. It's a result that a lot of people chase. They see a problem and then they go, okay, we need a body, right? And it's one of a myriad of different ways that you can enhance your capability as a company, or add resource, drive change, increase momentum, like whatever your goal is, the first thing that comes to mind is let's throw a body at it. No worries. However, I guess the system that we've built at Tier 11, and I think, the way we approach a lot of problems, and I think is the right method, is always to start foundationally with fundamentals like truths. And we do have a lengthy kind of foundational component of our recruitment process, which is looking first at, like, why are we hiring? What do we need? Like, what matters to Tier 11? What matters to our team? What matters to our culture? If you believe that in the recruitment process, the cultural component, the cultural fit is one of the most important things, as well as skills and everything else, then it will naturally lead you to be thinking about, okay, what are our values as a company? What's our vision? What's our purpose? What's the current status of how engaged our people are? And how do we get more people like them? Who are your best players? Who are your best people on the team? And how do you replicate those?
Yeah.
But understanding why they're your best players and starting with core values is one of the foundational components. You need to have core values.
Yeah. And it's something that I think it's thrown around a lot. It's like, oh, you need core values. You need to stand for something. But I think in a lot of corporate environments, which I was involved, your experience is obviously in the military. My experience is primarily in the corporate world, where there were core values, but they weren't adhered to. They're these dusty old maxims that sat on a wall somewhere at the corporate office, and nobody paid attention to them. And I think when you start your own organization, or whether it's or your own department, like you can have core values in your own department to a certain degree that roll up to the company. And I think that's a very important place to start. And when I talk on this, and I've talked about this quite a bit, is that nobody does that. They just go right to the result. Like, let me throw a body at it. And that's exactly what you're saying. And that just leads to a bad result. It's like you fill the void, but you have not found the right person, the right seat, right role that also is in alignment with your vision as an organization or as a department. And when we started hiring, we were very, very intentional about that. And we just got lucky that we hired a bunch of people that sort of knew what they were doing and were really good before we had a real system. And then all we did is we took the best person and then wrote down, like, what are the core characteristics? What do they have specifically?
Yeah.
And it was a long list, and we boiled it down to like 3 or 4 things. And those became our core values. And it was sort of this, what I always referred to way back then, this is, 7 or 8 years ago now, as our character diamond. But it's really, in essence, it was 4 things. And I think that's a good place to start. You haven't done that yet as an organization. I think none of the stuff that we say in the next part of the episode really matters all that much. Am I incorrect in saying that?
I agree completely. I think when you're looking to scale, you need the common thread in the company. You need the common DNA. And I think if you were to cross compare a lot of successful companies or startups, they would have similar attributes in their values, and they would drive their values in very specific ways to not only just have them on the wall, like you were saying. That's vanity, right? Like, that's, again, what we're talking about here is not just about having values and, oh, these are the values. That's also a result. Being able to articulate a set of guiding principles, these values, they need to be linked to what you expect to observe through behavior, right? So when we say our behavior is hunger, our value is hunger, what does that behavior look like? How is that actually observable in the business? How do you set that expectation? How do you reward for it? How do you train for it? How do you hire for it? Again, that's foundational, right? So what we're talking about here isn't just, oh, these are our values, tick, done. Like, it's a hard, lengthy, brain-consuming process to come up with values that matter, and then connecting it to your operations and the journey that you have as a company. That's even more difficult, because now you need to live the values and you need to inculcate them. There you go. That's for you, Ralph.
Oh, that's it.
Wait a second. Wait a second. What $20 word are you trying to drop right now?
It's an action, Lauren. You've seen it deployed. But
You and your military language. Oh my goodness. You've now seen it deployed. I'm sure like everyone else is like, okay, Josh is too smart for me right now. Can you explain what that word
I have
means?
no idea what that word is. Right.
The definition is to instill an idea, attitude, or habit by persistent instruction.
He just
But
Googled
it's
it.
basically,
He didn't know that off the top of his head.
I've got it up because I knew one of you would ask me, right? I knew one, so I've got it up here. Inculcate, verb.
Verb.
Similar to instill and ingrain.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Inculcate.
So you
It's infiltrating
It's
an idea.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like really intentionally nurturing something. And yeah, when it comes to hiring, it's like, yeah, you need a foundation, you need a vision, you need values. But I mean, that in and of itself is a whole podcast episode, right? Like just how to develop and come to terms with what your values are. But if you have these mapped out, it sets you up really well for all sorts of other things, not just the hiring, but it sets you up to build a workforce that is aligned to exactly what you're trying to achieve.
Right. So I guess, like you said, I think core values could be like an episode. Should have an episode on that specifically. Then you have to sort of infuse that as you go through what we're going to talk about here today. It's like the core values are an undercurrent of everything. By the time the candidate gets to me, I'm really thinking, all right, do they embrace those core values? And I have specific questions around those core values because I'm either the one that has the last interview, or we've already made the hire because you guys know exactly what to look for. And then my thing is just sort of either a tick in the box or it's after they've already been hired, just to sort of make sure, because I know the job has already been done. The point is like, once you have core values, they need to be like layered upon, or like it's like, I look at all the steps that we're going to talk about here today. It's like, it's the oil that kind of makes the engine go. And you have to constantly be thinking about it. It's not just, hey, I'm hiring for the skill. I need a media buyer. I need somebody who knows how to do Facebook ads. Great. That's one thing. But do they embrace our core values as well? Do they have hunger? Like the initial ones were humble, hungry, smart, and EIQ. EIQ is sort of smart. And the last one is marketing IQ. Like those were our 4 core values when we first started. Humble, hungry, smart, marketing IQ, because everyone had to know something about marketing. That's now changed. So it's much more simple. The point is we had something. And so we hired for all those things. We promoted for all those things. We trained for all those things. We fired for all those things too.
Yeah, that's right.
At the end of the day, like that is the essence of that inculcates that idea, inculcates all of your steps. Not to use your term or anything, but I guess I just did. So take us through the steps. So you've got your core values. Cool. Good. You do that as an organization. How do you go about hiring? Like, where does it sort of start? What's step number 1? And let's sort of go all the way through it. And do you have numbered steps here in your mind, or is it just like, how do you look at it?
Well, I mean, I guess there's kind of, if we take a step back, you can kind of divide it up into 3 phases, really. I mean, at least that's how I look at it. You've got the preliminary, like phase 1, which is all the stuff we're talking about now. It's like the foundational components that will feed into hiring and are super important, like the values and, getting an understanding of exactly what type of person or common thread that you want throughout the company in terms of like their behavior and the way they show up, right? Like some companies are all about fast moving change. Some companies are about stability. And then it matters intra-team as well. So yes, I think it's important to have a look at agency-wide or company-wide kind of the values and the culture that you're trying to nurture. But teams have their certain dynamics as well. Certain roles that you're hiring for, certain parts of the business depending, even you want to nail it down even more, like depending on the project that they're likely to take on, if they're a senior member or something, there's nuance that you need to work out first on what is their experience going to look like and demand, and mapping that out. And that kind of feeds into, I guess, more on that first phase, which is regarding, having a clear idea of your accountability chart or your organizational structure. You don't just want to be hiring people randomly and just throwing them into your organizational structure. You want to have an idea of the seats that you have on the bus, right?
But we always do that. Everyone listening
Yeah.
has done that at least once. We throw people at problems.
Totally.
It seems like it's the best solution. I paid you. You can fix this.
Right.
I didn't train you whatsoever, but I hired you. Therefore, I know you can do it.
Yeah, you're good.
100%. We've done that. I mean, every company makes that mistake.
Yeah. Every company does.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's right. So, that's being a seat-based organization, and there's always a push and pull between these things, I've found. There's a lot of advocacy for, if the person is right and they're a cultural fit and you have a need and you don't just quite know where they fit yet, get them on the bus anyway, because they'll figure it out. Even if the processes and systems are sloppy, they will rise to the challenge and they will get shit done. That's a mantra, that's a perspective, but it also needs to be balanced with the fact that you should not forego or forsake the need to have a clear idea on your accountability structure and why you're hiring a seat and how to define that seat. So that is really the first phase. It's all that due diligence that needs to happen. Having a clear idea of your organizational structure, and then developing the role itself, like the job map, which we call it at Tier 11, which is really like the Bible of the seat. It has expectations, a vision for the role, core accountabilities, competency levels. Like it's a comprehensive document, standalone, that you should be able to give someone, and they should be able to know exactly what they need to do, how they're going to be measured, what's expected of them, just from a single document. And creating that as an early exercise gets the juices flowing with, why are we hiring this seat? What are the expectations? What are the measures of success? And that's another kind of foundational component I would wrap into this first prelim phase. And then once you're clear on all of those things, you've got a very good idea of what you need, why you need it, what value they're going to drive. Then we start getting into the meat of like actual sourcing and recruitment and interviews and selection, simulation tasks, like cultural fit assessments. That's where you get the most variability.
You do simulation tasks before someone gets hired on all positions?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
We'll get to that in just a second.
That takes so much time and patience.
It does. It does. I just want to be clear before we go on to this, because I do think the simulator task, and when I explain it, when I talk about it, like especially when we went from 6 figures to 7 figures plus, it was an application to a simulator to a bunch of other steps before they even got to an interview, which was fascinating, and it worked so well. It's a longer process. But let's just take a step back here. The accountability chart is super important. And now that is, if you have not, we've talked about this so many times on the show, nearly 700 episodes. I think we talk about traction and EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, like obviously many, many times. And it's great to see, like when I go to some conferences for agencies, there's a lot of adoption on this system now, which is great. It's great to see, because it wasn't that way 5 to 10 years ago. When you talk about the accountability chart, we're really talking about an org chart, right? And I think when we first started, we're to Lauren's point, he said, oh, you're great. You fit the company culture. Just come on board. Great people will find you a seat. That works to a certain degree. And one of the best business books that I reread probably every single year, not probably, because I know that I reread it or listen to it, is Good to Great. It's like, find the right people, get them on the bus, and then figure out the seat on the bus. So there's 2 schools of thought here. So I don't think one is wrong and the other is correct, because it depends on where you are in your growth and in your business. Because the first way, just find the right people and then we'll figure out the seat, worked for us for a certain part of our growth. At a later point in time, though, we needed to have more structure. An accountability chart is basically, okay, we have, let's say, CEO, then we have leadership team, and then inside the leadership team, there's going to be managers, and under those managers, there's going to be all these individual people that are going to be the ones that are doing the skill or doing the thing. That is an accountability chart. That is like literally every quarter, what we used to do for EOS is we would actually fire everyone in our brains and restructure the organization and create a new accountability chart. It's like, what do we really need from a structure standpoint? And do we have the right people in the right seats? Do we even have the right seats? So I don't think, like you talked about that, but I don't know as if that's necessarily something that people think about quite as much, because as you become a multi-million dollar organization, this part becomes absolutely essential. Otherwise, it's chaos.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The term that we use quite a bit, and I'm not sure if it's Jim Collins, maybe it is, but it's, putting people in the parking lot, so to speak, when you're designing or reimagining or just going through this due diligence of like, do I need to hire this person? Or even when you're doing reviews of the company's structure, it's like the ability to emotionally remove yourself from the situation, because a lot of the people that you work with, you're connected to them.
100%.
You've built relationships with your immediate team, especially if you're a business owner. Like, it's difficult to emotionally detach yourself.
Yeah, you have personal relationships with these people.
You're spending more time with them than your partners and family.
Yeah, exactly.
I spend more time with Lauren than I do my wife. So it's not true. But actually, it's this week. Definitely.
Wait, hold on. Actually, I think that is true. I think you and I have had more conversations than you and Jen, which I'm not complaining about. But it is funny. But the fact of the matter is that, like you're saying, these are people that you personally invest in, you financially invest in, especially if you're the business owner. But then the other thing is, like, you assume expectations because they're coming into what could be a well-oiled machine, that could be a culture that is working really, really well. And I know this is like a sidebar to it, but there's also been times where, self included, and I'm certain other people listening, have hired someone that's come in with a wrecking ball and Miley Cyrus the team's groove. So eliminating that wrecking ball before it comes in has to be accounted for. And what you're talking about helps vibe check and groove check.
Yeah. I mean, hiring has the ability to destroy your business and also has the ability to take your business from good to great. Like, it's one of the things you just can't forsake. And when it gets to like the 20 to 80 and removing yourself from this as a business owner, or just if you need to offload some of the work that's done to get to this level of hiring quality, because it does take a lot of work. It's just important to remember that, like, I mean, in your case, Raf, for example, you built a hiring process that worked, right? And it got us to a certain position as a company. But the amount of sheer time it took for you to maintain that and for you to drive it and for you to continue iterating and improving upon it, like, you have the ability to do that as a business owner. Like, you proved it out, you built it. But you get to a point where it's just like you grow to the business to a certain point and you need to focus your efforts on other parts of the business or even elevate as a visionary. Yeah. And you can't let the hiring process degrade or diminish from that point. In fact, what you need to do is invest in it and increase its capacity and its ability, or at least maintain it where you left it. And to do that, you need to invest. Yeah. And I think a big component as well is this emotional side that's not really talked about, I don't think, too much.
Yeah.
Because hiring is a process, it's a system, it's a logical flow to get people into the organization. But fundamentally, we're talking about humans, right? We're talking about when we hire people, it's not just about a job or a seat. They're fundamentally changing their lives. They're upheaving, a lot of the time that they spend with their previous workforce, and they're subscribing to a new product, to Tier 11, right? And that's kind of the way we look at it at Tier 11. The mentality that we're starting to approach is looking at employment, or even just the employee experience, as a subscription product. Why do our employees or contractors want to subscribe to Tier 11? What's stopping them from getting up and saying, you know what, I'm going to change my Netflix subscription to Amazon. I'm going to change my Tier 11 subscription from this agency to another agency. if we approach it that way, then it forces the HR team or leaders to think about the employee experience first. And if you're thinking about the employee experience first, then you're going to develop a better hiring experience for them and also for the managers. So it's a good way to frame it as well.
All right. So we have covered an awful lot here on today's show. And for you, the Perpetual Traffic listener, I think this is one of the most important episodes that we've done in quite some time. So in that vein, what we'd like to do is do a part 2 with Josh, myself, and Lauren going through the hiring process, and then also get your feedback prior to doing show 2. We want to know what your issues are with hiring and how we can troubleshoot them live and on the air. So the best way to do that is to email Josh directly. It's Josh Hill, and it is josh@tier11.com. That's TIER, spell out 11.com. Email him your questions and make sure in the subject line of the email, put Perpetual Traffic. So make sure that wherever you're listening, you do leave a rating or a review, especially over on Spotify. Spotify's growing like a weed for us right now, which is great to see. A lot of downloads over there. So I really appreciate all you listening on Spotify. Leave us a rating and review. It really does help us to get a wider audience here, help entrepreneurs, directors of marketing, marketers like you get better at their craft and ultimately scale and grow their businesses. So I really do appreciate that. And of course, check us out over on our YouTube channel over at perpetualtraffic.com/YouTube. So on behalf of my awesome, amazing co-host, Lauren E. Petrullo, until next show, see ya.